Well, it's Friday. It was supposed to be a beautiful day, but it's very sort of gray. It's supposed to be super nice today, but we have snow coming in tomorrow, so that's appropriate for this time of year. Sorry, I'm just looking at somebody walking a dog. It is Friday. It is Friday, March 4th. And so, I don't know, here we are. Look at this. It's Friday. I had actually a sort of an Ammonite triumph. Someone on Reddit on one of the fossil identification subreddits put up a thing saying, "Hey, I'm in Denmark. Look at this rock. What is it? What is this thing?" And it looked like somebody literally had taken a bite out of the rock. It looked like teeth marks. And I chimed up and I said, "That's an Ammonite phantom in sedimentary rock." And two people, one of whom is tagged as a geologist, agreed with me. So, maybe I'm getting somewhere. So I'm going to write those guys. Or at least I'll write them and I'll say, "Hey, look," and I'll tell them about the situation here and see if they know anything about it or if they heard anything about it, or I'll get on it for somebody. The second thing I wanted to do is I wanted to promote podcast. Michael Canfield's On the Dog Watch podcast. That's onthedogwatch.com. Michael Canfield is a serious watch enthusiast. He interviews sort of different people within sort of the watch collecting world and watch industry, watch repair, that kind of stuff. And he talks. He wanted to record me for one podcast, and I probably gave him enough for two. But yeah, please check it out. Michael Canfield, and that is onthedogwatch.com. Oh. Wrist check. So wrist check. I'm wearing a watch that is super cool. I super love. 7546 7040. This is one of the 70-meter sport diver line with a Silver Wave Z. It's the 4 Jewel 7546, but it's every bit the same in every other way. It's a beautiful piece. But I'm wearing this one for a reason. I had a question about one of the new Tissot releases, and it uses this kind of integrated bracelet, calling a bracelet watch, and so it's pretty cool. I'll insert a picture of that here, and then we'll talk about it later on down the line. It's just these companies are starting to dig up style cues from this particular period of the 70s, which up to now has been, I wouldn't say unloved, but it's been overlooked. Would we accept overlooked? I think so. Okay, but I think they're just beautiful watches. Super spare and clean. Really nice. Okay, well, first watch question. JC. I always thought Seiko used promethium. Seiko did mess around with promethium. Promethium. Seiko messed around with promethium when they brought out the first of the slim case 6309s in the middle part of the 80s and later on. They came with a couple different. You can sometimes find. No, is that true? Is that only true for 7002s? With 7002s, they did use promethium, except there was. There's the secondary line that I always think of as the Tanloom 7002s, whereas instead of using this promethium, which I'll show you, is this flat stuff and it turns gray. It's gray like when you touch a moth wings and you get that gray dust on your fingers from all of the whatever the things are, all the stuff on their wings, and it comes off. It looks like that. Tom N. Hello. Hi, Spencer. Another great Saturday morning. That's awesome. Great Saturday mornings are where it's at. Wait, Today's Friday, and that means tomorrow is Saturday morning, and I do like Saturday mornings. Another great Saturday morning, thanks to you. You're welcome. Thank you. Very astute observations on the Boba Fett series. I've not watched it yet, but what you said makes sense. I think my biggest gripe about Star Wars is that they've attached themselves so deeply to this particular storyline, this particular family, this particular time, that particular planet. It's an enclosed stage. It's a loop. It just keeps going around. I mean, in theory, that world, the Star Wars verse, there's been multiple republics and empires before then for tens of thousands of years. I don't know how you can have a coherent, continuing society for that long, but whatever. But my point being is there's a ton of stuff to explore that does not involve Skywalkers. I'm hoping that when they continue with the Ahsoka series, that they're going to basically pick up where Rebels left off, and they're going to be able to hunt down Thrawn and go find Ezra and maybe deal with the Bulan Vong or something else like this. Something different. I also wish that they had more, I don't know, realistic stuff. Truly realistic, how people actually live. Not the top of the top or these sort of, sketch characters. I mean, regular people have to get through life. They have to do stuff. I mean, life is tough. They're doing a lot more of that in Book of Boba Fett. That's part of what I like about it. And I also think that's part of what some people are upset about, because it's more about character building and world building than it is going pew pew. So it's more of a slow burn, but I mean, and it helps to have seen The Mandalorian 100%. But yeah. Okay, back to Tom N's questions. Oh, he's talking about the Omega triple date. Oh, I understand. Remember, we were talking about the Mark 40 last week, the Mark 40 Omega, sometimes called the Michael Schumacher Omega. They're super colorful. They're a standard Omega movement that has a chrono module bolted to the top, but they're attractive watches. Hell on wheels to service. Man, sir, I got one, and I serviced it, and there was some twitchy, touchy stuff. There's some things where it's like you're holding down elements that are mostly spring-loaded, and when you're putting in, the locking pieces to lock them in place, you're just like, crazy spring-loaded house of cards. I did it, though. Beautiful watch. I just couldn't get, there was something about it on my wrist. I think it was too cheerful. So, back to Tom N. My Omega triple date is not the multicolored Schumacher, it's the black dial version. I love it all the way around. I haven't seen one of those in person since 2011. I knew a guy who bought a lot of watches back then, and I actually saw it when one of his packages came in, and I got to see one of those. They're cool. I think oxidation can cause loss of luminescence with the lume. That's something I was positing last week. Something similar happens with the fluorophore used with radium, where it is burned out not by oxygen but by radiation. This could be also due to a lack of light exposure as the watch sits in a drawer. Light and oxygen and heat, those are bad things. Some fluorophore that I use in my job behave this way. I just watched Martin from Adventures in Amateur Watch Fettling. Great, by the way. Literally, he's the number one watch personality of any type that I follow. I go right to Martin. Okay. I just watched Martin from Adventures in Amateur Watch Fettling do a restoration of a King Seiko 5626, including addition of a metal day and date changer stir wheel. Well, yeah, I mean, once you do that, then if Seiko had done that from the get-go, people would be doing all kinds of crazy stuff with 5606s. They're great, great, great movements. Anyway, this day issue got me thinking about day and date changers on other old Seikos. I'm hesitant to set the day and date on watches coming out of the box for only a few days for fear of causing undue wear. Are these fears unwarranted? I would say so. I mean, the only way you're going to get damage from setting the day and the date is if you do it. I can't even imagine how many revolutions you would need how many cycles you'd need to do in order to cause catastrophic wear. Unless you try to do something that is going to damage the watch, like setting at the wrong time or something really weird, I can't imagine there's going to be any way to wear that stuff out. Where I've seen day and date stuff kind of get funky, above and beyond the 56 series, is where you have like on the 6106, 6119, that kind of stuff. They have a date finger. You push the crown in. It's crown push to set. So you push it in, and this lever comes up, and the back of this lever pushes the date wheel that way, and this arm hits the date and turns the star wheel for the day. It's sort of a cascade thing. Those can get bad if the crown gasket is really sticky, or it's packed with a lot of filth, or the watch is in the wrong time, like it's in between that 9 and 3 thing. And if people are pushing, they're trying to change it, and it's getting harder and harder to change that date. I have seen it where that corrector finger will bend. Instead of, it's supposed to be up, like it's supposed to have like a little crook up like this, but it's supposed to be flat. And what I'll see is people are pushing and pushing and pushing, and it'll come back a little bit and twist up like this. And then what you'll start to see is you can push the date, and the date should go over, but then the day it'll go and snap back. It's not being pushed far enough. But that's a result of basically working the watch in a way it wasn't meant to be worked, or not maintaining it, or not sort of listening to the watch with your fingers when you're doing stuff. If something in a watch is really fighting you, you need to stop. There's something is wrong. But in this case, these day date problems are a result of lack of maintenance or user error, that kind of stuff. Generally, there's, I would almost say that if you're only, these watches are coming out of the box, rarely, it's not a bad idea to go through and pull the crown. You're looking at the watch, you've got to set it anyway. Spin it up over the midnight. Make sure the day and date. These are standard checks I always do. I'll grab a watch. I pull the crown. I set the time forward until it goes over the day-date change, if applicable, unless it's a no date. And I make sure that that's correct. It's a check I always do. See if it's snapping over cleanly, snapping over at midnight, that kind of thing. And then you go over it and you get it passed, assuming we're in the middle of the day, you set it to the correct time, and then you can set your day or date or whatever. And the nice thing about that is if they're just sitting in a box, maybe everything needs a little bit of work. And if you're only changing over the date once or twice or 3 times in the space of a month or whatever, it doesn't hurt at all. But it probably is good to run it around. Let's see. Oh, I miscopied another piece of this, of JC's question. Well, in any case, he had said, I always thought Seiko used Promethium. And then the second part of the question, which I put in the wrong place, is, I know you said that one or both of your parents taught at CSU, Colorado State University. If that is in fact true, of course it's true. What subject did they teach? My dad was a microbiologist. My mom, she got a master's in like fabrics and clothing design when I was young and we were still living in England. I remember we went to the Victoria and Albert Museum, and Mom went there as a researcher. So I was, I don't know, I was a tweener, maybe younger. I remember we got allowed into a big back room with these drawers, big, huge, flat drawers filled with stuff. And Mom's focus was really on, Renaissance times. And so she got to look at, some very old pieces of clothing. I wish I'd been more appreciative at the time. But in any case, yeah, Dad taught at CSU. He was a micro professor. He had, that's what he taught, but he had 4 degrees. Mom had 2. She never taught at CSU, but she was involved with them academically, and she did all the costume design for like the music department and the theater department, like opera and all that stuff. She did that. But neither of them are with us anymore. That's the way it is. Any case, if that in fact is true, sorry, I read that and maybe you meant something different, but if something comes out of my mouth, I live in pathological fear of lying. I can't imagine. I'm not okay with lying. I don't deal well with lying or people who lie to me or people who tell me an obvious lie and expect me to believe it. It's because I'm a pretty trustworthy person, and so I like to trust people. And so in order to trust people, I also want to make myself trustworthy. So I don't know. I'm kind of weird about lying. It really zaps me. So perhaps that wasn't your intent. I'm sure that it wasn't. You seem to have a good overall grasp of science. I don't know. My brain works that way. I grew up in a rational household. I mean, my father was insanely right-wing and extremely religious, but he was a scientist. And when you got down to numbers and facts and evidence and, all this stuff, he was extremely no nonsense about it. If the data supported the conclusion, great. If new data came to light that perhaps changed that conclusion or made him want to look at something more, then it would change. Science is not a religion. Science is a tool to investigate and better understand our world, the world that we exist in. So, I don't know. I mean, so there was a great atmosphere of science in my... Is it that cold? God, she looks like she's running in a Christmas sweater. Crazy. Any case, so I grew up in a world of just looking at stuff and trying to figure out, well, why did this happen? And my dad was very, very serious about finding the factual basis for things. And so it was a key part of problem solving. If you're going to problem solve effectively, you have to know what's really going on. So, I mean, to me, I was raised, that was just simple. You got to figure it out. You got to figure out what the problem is and you got to go fix it. I don't know. It's an interesting thing to me. I could go off on that for a long time, but there's so much in the world to know and so many things to learn, and science, the process, is the tool to use to decode it. Okay, sorry for that rant. Let's go on to the next question. Yeah, my dad was made emeritus post-mortem, like right after he died, and they gave him a parking spot. My deceased father. I certainly hope that they didn't keep that, because there's no member of my family now who is involved with CSU and no reason for us to keep a parking spot. I do wonder though. I wonder if they kept his name on his office plate. I mean, he was in that office for almost 50 years. I don't know. I'm not going over to campus to find out. Okay, next question. Pete. Wear earplugs when hand sanding. Strangely dangerous for tinnitus-prone ears. You know, that's interesting, Pete, that you mentioned that. Because a couple weeks ago, I was doing a lot of handstanding, and it was just, I don't know, it was weird how it kind of sat on my ear. And so whenever I use power tools, I use earplugs. But going forward, basically, if I'm out there and I don't need to listen to something, I put on my big, like, chainsaw, my earmuffs. What do you want to call them? Anyway, I wear those, and I can't hear anything, and I'm perfectly fine. Super Cruise. A follow-up to last week's winding bridge bearing assembly repair. Remember that? I got the winding bridges for the 6138 and 6139s, the little ones. I used the same setup you used on camera. I used that off camera too. But using the second stake that you using to close up holes. This presses down on the outer part of the upper race ring. That's what I was doing. Actually, I was trying to close that outer race to make the channel smaller, unless I'm misunderstanding you. Usually, with almost all winding bridges, that ring gets loose. I didn't know. I just assumed the bearing, that the races themselves wore out and just got sloppy. I check every watch I do service on and typically hear a small bit of a click as that upper race ring reseats. For ball bearing assemblies that show excessive slop, you can give a few taps to the stake and rock the bridge up and down fore and aft with your thumb and forefinger to check the amount of slop in the race. Give the bridge a spin while it's in the stake. Wasn't I doing that last week? I think I was. No, in fact, I know I was. Yeah, because you got to stake it down and spin it and see how it is. Stake it down and spin it and see how it is. Anyway, you continue this process until you're happy with the amount of free play in the bearing race. Care needs to be taken to not go too far, which will put drag on the bearings and you will have to source a new assembly. Thanks for showing this technique on your channel. Oh, you're welcome. You know, we learn every single day. I've looked at the repairing those winding bridges a few times, but it's not a part that one is, I guess I've never felt driven to go through the entire process and figure out how to do that, or if it even could be done, because I have access to those winding bridges, so it hasn't been a thing. But going forward, it's extremely important to know. For the winding bridge rivets or the weight rivets? I think you mean the weight rivets. Because the way those weights are made is you have a base metal weight. It's that half moon circle thing, and then it goes onto basically sort of a flat metal plate. It's staked on with 3 rivets, and then that is the thing that gets screwed to the axle, the arbor of the framework with ball bearings. So, for the winding weight rivets, I use a pointed stump that has a small divot at the point. This supports the top side of the rivet on the weight turned upside down. Bring in the stake with a point end that fits nicely into the rivet flange on the bottom of the weight. Yeah. Give the stake a few taps on each rivet, which is supported by the opposite side by the pointed stump described above. The rivet flange spreads out slightly and tightens the bridge to NOS spec, John S. Yeah, it's, I remember the very, very first time I tried to do that, I got in a weight and it was really loose. And the watch was super nice. One of the things that I'm finding that I need to do in situations like that is I need to use, there are some pieces that come with the Zeitz set that hold them together. You can actually lock it on and screw it down and it'll hold the pieces together nice and firm. And that's really important because if you're hitting it, you know, you're hitting that rivet, you're going to be pushing the sections apart basically, unless they're held firmly. And then, but if you, because like the first time I ever did it, this is a very long time ago, all I succeeded in doing was fully disconnecting the weight from the rest of that weight assembly. Because I just pushed the rivets straight out. Got to hold it. Got to make sure it's tight, yeah, because if you can flex it all, you're going to be trying to push it out, and it's not going to be upward. It's supposed to be where the cross section of the port is like this. It's going to be down further, and it's not going to hold. There's just nothing more. No, there are lots of things more terrifying than this, but in terms of watch work, when a weight comes loose inside a watch, all the damage that can be done. Anyway, it's lots of fun fixing things. There's lots of fun fixing stuff. I was working last night until a little after 1 in the morning, and I was working on a 6138, and I had to swap out the lower mainspring arbor jewel, which is in the calendar plate. It's the same exact jewel that is used in the center wheel cocks for the 6000 series. That jewel in the middle that goes around the center wheel, that jewel is exactly the same as the 6138 lower mainspring arbor jewel. So there's a million of those things, and so you can get that and hork a jewel out of it and put it in, which is great. I have to thank Adrian Selleck of Vintage Time Australia for that tip. He gave that tip to me a good while ago, and it has always come in handy, because for a while there, many years ago, I got in this like conga line of 6138s that all had cracked jewels, and I couldn't find a source for the jewels, so I was sourcing complete plates, which I didn't need to do. But anyway, it's fun. It's fun sinking in those jewels, and I just think it's fun. Okay, next question. Mike D. Hey Spencer, long time no comment. That is true. Nice to hear from you. I am currently listening to this while sizing the bracelet on my new Tizo PRX quartz, the one styled after their quartz C-Star model from the 70s. What do you think of this Tizo release, whether it be quartz or automatic version? You guys take care. Well, it's... So I think it's interesting. I didn't ever really I didn't know that there was a thing called a bracelet watch. So we all learn. It's a bracelet watch. So it's just interesting that kind of specialty case with the proprietary, bracelet lug thing. You can't just slap any bracelet on it. It's got to be one that's correct for the case. And that's, I'd be curious to see. According to the articles I've read, they are rocketing up in popularity, which is interesting because I've always liked these. I've always liked these. Not so much that I like the integrated bracelet, but I like the way the taper looks, especially like with this one where you have this nice solid block. It's a very clean, purposeful, I just think it's a very clean and purposeful, manly design. I think it's awesome. Bruce Barlow. Spencer. Bruce. I received your posting alert on my Saturday down here in New Zealand, but only get to view usually on Sunday afternoon after weekend jobs, etc. My earliest 7548 was manufactured in July 1978, sold in New Zealand new. Okay, July 78. Does anybody out there, what is your earliest 754X? Let's go that. If you have a 7548 that's very early, okay, cool. But 7546 also were coming out at that time. So let me know. I am curious because I have the production dates for like 6139s and 6138s in my head, but I've never really thought so much about the 7548s. The 6309s, I think the earliest 63309 I've ever seen, it was like December 76 was the case back date. I don't know, but it was right there at the beginning. But I don't think this 7548s were that early. Next question. Oh, no, wait. I never finished Bruce Barlow's question. Regarding the 6309 crown seals, remember last week I talked about rebuilding the 5-part 6309 or 7548 crown. This is applicable too for like the H558 Ernie crown, not the 7546s because they use another style, but 6105s, that kind of thing. Well, no, not 6105s because those are not meant to be rebuilt. Regarding the crown seals, I never remove the crown post, due to the risk of snapping off the post threads. It's a little more tricky replacing the seal, but it can be done. The key with getting those out is heat. You gotta heat the crown in order to, because those crown posts, those are adhered in place. Seiko used glue. And so, but you heat it up and it will release. If you just try to go at that crown post cold, chances are real good you're going to snap that thing off. And if it doesn't snap off, you have an increased chance when you're screwing it back down that the partial crack that developed when you were unscrewing it will become a full crack when you're screwing it back down and the threads come off and the thing's ruined. I've actually done that, I think, like 3 times. Maybe 4. So it's heartbreaking. You have this crown, which was perfectly fine, and you've taken the crown post out, and you've changed the seal, and everything's awesome. You're getting ready to, put your assembly back together, and you put the crown post in, and the crown post just comes off in your hand, and the threaded portion is inside the crown, and I've gotten them out a couple of times. If it's not fully seated down all the way, you can get something really sharp and fine down there, and you can just kind of like the tiniest needle point, and you get onto the broken stump, and if you wiggle a little bit, and you can start it to turn out backwards, you're good. Most every other time that has not worked, and the crown has been junk. I save them all. One of these days, I'm gonna come up with a solution for how to save those, and also the dead 6105 crowns, the dead 6309 crowns, dead 6139 crowns, dead 6138 crowns, a dead King Seiko crown. Someday, I mean, what you need is a jeweler's. You need a jeweler's, like basically like a drill press, which is not something I have here, but I wish I did. Because then you could get those stumps out, and then you've got your crowns are good. The next question is about Seiko 7015s. These are the Daini chronographs. 7015, 7016, 701. I'm sorry. It's 7015, 7016. Yeah, correct. I don't know why I'm having trouble remembering that today. These are the Daini chronographs, like the like the Monacos and stuff like that. Okay, so this gentleman, his username is in Japanese and kanji, which I can't read, so I apologize for not even trying to do your name. I can't. Hi, thanks for sharing the interior of this rare piece. Yeah, I guess, you don't get to see a lot of the insides of those. I'm going to do a couple 7016s coming up, though. I just gotten my hands on one, finally. I noticed, like yours, when you change the time past the day dial does not change from Saturday to Sunday. Is that normal? No, it's not normal. Regardless of the day that it shows, it should click over smoothly. Tell you what, let's look. I have a 7016 out, like right now. In fact, I might even have a 7015. It's in near mint, and I could try that one too. Let's break, and I'll go over there and look at him. I think I misunderstood him. I think he's talking about the watch changing day date. The watch changing day date right at midnight. What happens ideally, the way that Seiko set them is when you have the hands come up to the top dead center. That's where I want, and where Seiko typically will have the date click over right there. The hand comes up to midnight, and it clicks. The way that it's the day and the date wheels are staggered, because you don't want to stack that resistance, because you're adding basically resistance to the entire train, because you're pulling off some power to push the day and the date over, and you're going to need enough power in order to overcome their resistance. So typically most every watch that I'm aware of, certainly that I work on, it'll click the date will go clack, and then you have the slower process of clicking the day over, and it takes it a couple times. You're saying that you're getting a day wheel change from 24:30 hours, basically 12:30 midnight. And then by 1 in the morning, 2500 hours, as you put it here, it clicks over. Yes, that is normal. But again, we're going to go over here and I'll look at it. What the hell? Okay, so this is 7015 8000? I was right. 7015 8000. This watch is completely original. It's never been restored, never been touched. Lovely, lovely, lovely watch. By the way, I found when I was going through this, I found another dial of the same model, but one that came out of a junk lot. Well, does a number on it, doesn't it? Okay, we are going to look at the date change. So this watch is dead stock. Let's go. So yours changed. Changed from English Saturday to Kanji Saturday at 12:30 indicated. So let's see. Okay. Click. Look at that. That's pretty good. A couple minutes before. Wow, that takes a while to get going, doesn't it? That's a pretty long click over. Wow, crazy. Let's look at here's a 7016. This watch is also unrestored. It's going to be restored, but it's currently unrestored. Okay, we're clicking, starting to roll. Wow, okay, that one's not quite as precise, and then that one kicks in right away. Wait, we're still at 1 o'clock and it's on Friday. Okay, so 3 something. Crazy. I don't know if that's regular or not, but there it is. Oh, on another subject, we were talking about the 0624 batteries. 0634. I thought it'd show an 0624. This watch actually lives. It's really, the LCD is super dark. It's hard to see. There's no battery in it now. They sort of eat up power, but man, the production quality on these was just fantastic. These things were super expensive. Someday. Navy Blue Monster. Spencer, have you ever tried Erica's original MN straps? These are some of the most comfortable straps ever. You can get them on Holben's fine watch straps. I switched over to these straps and am done with NATO straps. These are the ones that are stretchy and they go over it and they come back and they hook on the side. It's like it's a single pass, and instead of having like the double loops and stuff, it's a tighter package. I did have one, yes, on my Solar Arnie reissue, and it was I liked it. There was it was still a little bulky for me, but I think the one I had was kind of like a prototype. This was pretty early, I think. I like the colors. I don't know, they seem like they're very comfortable. If I was outside doing a lot of sports stuff with a sport watch, that's probably something I would consider because they have stretch. So if you catch it on something, it might not necessarily break. They shouldn't be able to unhook and the watch shouldn't come off your wrist even if you lose a spring bar because it's like a NATO. It's like this. NATOs are just too bulky for me. There's just too much there. I don't like that thing where you like look down at your wrist and it's like there's this big like donutty thing around your wrist because the strap or the bracelet or whatever is too bulky. And so I think about the best I can deal with is is like a single pass cloth strap. I'm really fond of those. I just want to minimize bulk. But maybe I should try it again. Maybe I should try one again. I do like they have one that's like an antique color, like an antique vintage military thing, green, and it's sort of it's an older style green. And actually that one I do like. I liked the color, that kind of, because it looks like army, military surplus. I thought that was awesome. Speaking of military surplus, the Ukrainian defense minister, I'm trying to think, was this Ukrainian defense minister or some Russian minister? But anyway, the war over in Ukraine, the Russians are abandoning so many pieces of equipment that it essentially, apparently, has entirely, basically 100% replaced all the vehicles they've currently lost because of Russia's invasion. So good on the Russians, I guess, for replacing the machines that get broken up. I've also heard that that big convoy that's coming from the south, the one that's like, 40 miles long, I've heard there's been an announcement that has been encircled by Ukrainian forces. I don't know if that's true. The coolest thing, though, before the invasion, before Russia invaded, back when they were still saying, no, we're not going to invade, and then they invaded, the Japanese ambassador to Ukraine, they knew trouble was coming. You can find pictures of this online. He sent home for his pieces of his great-grandfather's samurai armor and his family sword. And they shipped it to him. So rather than evacuating out of Ukraine, the Japanese ambassador is still there wearing his sword. Or at least he was in this picture. I thought that was funny. He said he was ready to fight. I don't know what it'd be like if you're some poor Russian conscript who hasn't eaten in 3 days and you're trying to figure out what your next step is because somebody just punched a hole through the gas tank of your 6-wheeled rocket launcher carrier and you're not going anywhere. You turn around, you're looking at a building and trying to get, I don't know, something. And there's this Japanese guy with a samurai sword. I think the shock value alone would probably make the fellow run. Carlos Paggi, P-A-G-I. Paggi? So I'm sorry if I got that wrong. Ace Video Spencer, thanks. I don't remember what video it was, but I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I recently bought a lovely old 7546 sports diver with an isoframe strap fitted that was speckled with paint. To help loosen the paint before scrubbing and possibly scarring the strap, I soaked it in isopropyl alcohol, and after treatment it did feel a little more supple. To add to this, I used my usual trick with thicker rubber straps for coiling each side up tightly behind the watch and securing with a rubber band when storing. This helps add a little memory. Acetone. Acetone and mineral spirits are worth a shot too, as I've used those to remove the tack from PlayStation joysticks. Afterwards, they were soft and grippy again. I'd be cautious with naphtha, petrol, or diesel, though, as it may break down the material of the strap if it has petrochemical constituents. Keep up the great work and good luck, mate. Thank you. I appreciate the good luck. Acetone. I don't know, acetone. only use acetone for like a few very, very specific things. I've had acetone get near certain things with disastrous results. Not the least, actually, some of my Seiko tools, the plastic that Seiko uses for like a 6139 movement holder or something like that. Years ago, I was doing something. I was stripping out some hands, and I got I had some acetone on my thumb, and I grabbed one of my Seiko tools, and the thing just melted. I touched it, and it's like my thumb was red hot. Acetone makes me nervous. Alcohol certainly can be used if I'm getting tarnish off of a piece of metal. I sometimes use Tarnex, which is another product that used correctly can do great stuff. Used incorrectly can cause terrible, terrible damage. But if it's a metal piece, you use Tarnex, and you dip it in that, and it gets rid of the stuff. It's kind of like a one dip, but it's specifically for tarnish. And then I go and I rinse that out, and then I take the piece and I rinse it in 91% grain alcohol to bind to all the other liquids, the water and everything that's left in there from the rinse, and pull them out. So that's when I use that. I have tried in the past a number of different things to make straps softer. I've never had any luck with it. Many years ago, on the old forum, there was one of the Brits said, "Oh yeah, this castrol anti-seize, some kind of grease, like a red grease." And he said, "Oh yeah, it works great." And this was a long time ago, but I think I was still making videos then. But I tried it, actually. I took a strap, and though he was using it to try to re-moisturize crown seals, I don't think that worked at all. But anyway, I put a bunch of it on an original Seiko rubber strap. I slathered it with the stuff, and I put it in a Ziploc bag, and I left it for a week, 2 weeks. No difference. There was a commenter a couple videos ago that said that the stiffness of the rubber isn't that it's losing volatile elements. That's what he told me. I thought that's what it was, but he stated that it was his belief that it was some kind of crystalline structure growing inside the rubber, which then held a form. It wasn't amorphous, and so the flexibility got less. I mean, I don't know why then, if that's the case, why you couldn't heat the ever-loving heck out of the strap, because you heat these stiff straps, and they'll just go like this. So what if you heat the strap so it's all floppy, and then you run it through something that is like a series of wheels, so it goes, and just keep doing that, keep running it back and forth, keep it wiggling and moving as it cools. And I'd be curious to see if it comes out, if you break up any of those structures. But I'd have to build a machine to do that, so just an idea. Mineral spirits. I really don't use mineral spirits for a whole lot unless I'm doing paint work, looming work, that kind of thing. I use them for cleaning up really nasty things, like on a movement old grease, S3 or S4 mainspring grease. That's how I get rid of that stuff. Alcohol, you don't want to get anywhere near your dial. We had, Mr. Boyarski up there in Alaska. He ran a 6602 dial. He put alcohol across it, and it attacks the lacquer immediately. Which is another reason, by the way, why you're not supposed to ever use alcohol for anything in a watch that is bound in place, like using like the pallet forks, any of that stuff, that resin that's supposed to hold that stuff in place. It's heat activated, right? Holds the pallet stones in place. But it also reacts very, very well to alcohol. And so you don't ever want to clean a pallet fork. Otherwise, the stones will come off and it'll be bad. Everything has its place. I have learned through trial and error that things are great right up until they're not, and when they're not, and they start going wrong, ooh, they go wrong fast. Chemicals are awesome if you get them to do exactly what you want. You don't want them out of what you're doing because they can cause terrible problems. But you know, isopropyl alcohol. I don't know what that would do to a rubber strap. I have no idea. Well, if we can come up with something that you guys want me to try, I will try it. I remember I picked up this 7548. It came in last week. It's completely original watch. Look at the frosting on the Tsunami. You see that frosting there around the wave? Someone had this watch and they had it maintained and they had the batteries changed and everything else like that. This is the original strap and it is stiff. I tried manually working this to try to make it more flexy. Not really. So if somebody has some chemical formula that they want to try, let me know and I'll try it. And we'll put this in some stuff and we'll see how it does. Not the whole watch, just the strap. Augustine Aguilar, next question. Hello, Spencer. About your rubber strap. I really don't know, but there's a guy on YouTube who specializes in digital watches. In one of his videos, he's using a grease that he also used for gaskets. It's not a silicone grease to soften the strap of a Seiko S234. The Seiko S234 is an aliens watch, in case anybody's wondering. It's a runner's watch that the colonial Marines wore, and they had a very particular ladder-style rubber strap. And like this one, they got stiff. Here's the video in case you want to give it a try. Okay, so I looked at the video. He is using some kind of unnamed marine lubricant, something in sort of a darkish honey amber tan in like a model paint bottle. It has no label on it. And all he said was some kind of marine grade lubricant. And I would need to know what that stuff is, if he can tell me that. I've tried all kinds of other crazy stuff, but I've never had anything that had any kind of lasting impact or helped really at all. And I've tried on a number of different kinds of rubbers and with lots of different stuff. But if we can find out what that actual material is, I'll try it. Mr. Saulbrook. Hi, Saul. Where you are, it's Saturday. I hope you're having a good Saturday. Sorry, I need to trim my mustache because I'm curly everywhere. Even I have a curly mustache and hair, and it's tickling me. Okay, Saul Brook. I don't understand a GMT watch. Tracking dual time zones doesn't necessarily mean any specific offset from GMT, or these days, UTC. Whether a traditional four-hander with a fixed bezel, an independently adjustable hand, or a rotating ring with a fourth hand slave to what would have been the day wheels function, I still prefer a three-hander with a rotating 12-hour bezel to track a second time zone. It looks cleaner than a 24-hour track and is only deficient in not immediately indicating AM versus PM in the second time zone, which is hardly ever an issue for me. Well, the way that works, of course, a lot of the GMT watches, like if you think about Rolex GMTs, their indicator rings, their rotating rings, are two colors, AM and PM, and so that covers for that. I don't know. I want to pull out my my Glycine Airman. I think that would be fun to do. Okay, GMTs. What do I know from GMT? Nothing. This is one of the pre. But if I'm correct, this is one of the pre Invicta glycines. The original MSRP for this thing was $2,900. Came with a handy dandy little wooden boxy diddly thing. Okay, what do we have going on here? That's a pretty badass looking watch, isn't it? It's ever so slightly too big. Man, I wish it was like 40 millimeters or 39. This one's just a little big. That's a cool watch. Look at that. I touched it, barely touching it's running. It has a great movement in it. These just go for nothing these days. It's not even worth selling, really. Okay, we got a hacking there. So there's our 24-hour hand, and this one also has this one actually, Saul, is a third category, because this has the wait, is that independently slaved? Okay, so I'm setting time here. What the heck time is it? Oh, God. That's in the middle of the night, wee hours. Jeez, oh, Pete. This is a 12:50 coming up. 12:50. We're going to come right back to 50, and we will synchronize. Yeah, I love the look of it, actually. It's really badass, and it was a great runner. I mean, it has no miles on it. I should give it some time. Oops. Okay, I'm a few seconds ahead, but whatever. I'm not going to I don't want to change the date. Is this one independently settable? You know, screw it. Let's get out of here. Come on. Oh, yeah, it has to be. Okay, look at that, and it clicked over there. So now, okay, now we're 24 hours. Now it is 10 a.m. So I should be able to, yeah. So you would use this, I don't know, it just seems like I don't know, man, this seems like because, I mean, you've got this as well. You unscrew this diddly, and you can turn this. You've got all kinds of frames of reference. We have a trip to Florida coming up. Maybe I'll take this one. Maybe that's a great idea. I think, in fact, that's a fabulous idea. And I'll use my 2 time zones to indicate where I am and where I was. And because then, if it's all automatic, I don't have to think about it. Because if I have to set a bezel all the time, it's just like I'll just forget to do it. And then the information will be useless. Yeah, I think I'll take this one. When we go down to visit Sabrina's grandmother, I will take this down. I think this will be my Florida watch. Cool. This next question is from Alexander Watch BSB. It is in Hola, ¿cuánto tiempo dura batería do Seiko 0634 5009? I believe that means how long does the battery last in a Seiko 0634? The Seiko 0634 is an early LCD, pretty much the earliest one. 3 o'clock, just indicating a couple minutes before. We're on target. The 0634 and 0624s, that was like that was the Lemon Drop, and then the Isaac Hayes, the world's first quartz liquid LC chronograph, that kind of stuff. Analog, digital quartz chronograph. The battery really is going to depend on use. You're going to have a steady drain from the mechanism itself ticking over. If you're hitting the light a lot, it'll probably shorten the battery some, but I would expect like 3 years. I don't know. Yeah, about 3 years, I would say. I don't think they're the most terribly battery efficient watches in the world, but hey, man, they were the first of their kind. Long enough, the display will start flashing when the battery is low. Low battery warning. Next question. SC Devon, Scooter Club of Devon? I do like a scooter. I'm sure you're not Scooter Club of Devon, but if you are, tell me about it. Great work. I really like vintage Seiko. Me too. I wish there were more parts support from Seiko on older watches, but I don't think even they realized that they would become such classics. I don't think Seiko doesn't really think about from my observation, Seiko doesn't seem to really think about the past too much. When you see them referencing the past, it will be as a callback to a legacy for a current model watch that they're trying to tie to past glory. They obviously have recognized that these older models are the ones that people really like, 6105s and all these different reissues. But they're only doing that because they're hoping to sell new watches. I think the only reason they ever had a worldwide network of service centers in the 60s and the 70s was because they were trying to directly compete with the Swiss. And they wanted to be like, look, we're a real company. You can get your stuff fixed here. But they've never been about that. The tendency has been for them to discontinue parts support more and more quickly as time has gone on. Some things were discontinued. What was it? I think it was the Stargate bezels, because it has that little raised pip for 12, and it's only held in place with like a teeny tiny screw. That they stopped producing replacement rotating rings for those while the watches were still being made, which is wild. I mean, they did that a few times. There was another example I was just thinking of, and of course I forgot. But yeah, they're as soon as they could, feel confident enough that they weren't going to have to worry about it anymore, they'd cut the line and they'd stop making parts. They're not a legacy company. They're not thinking about preserving their past. They're not they're not going to go and find all these old pieces and make sure that they'll run forever and that kind of stuff. They don't seem to care. They have always cranked out a bajillion watches, and if you have a problem with the old one, well, they have a ton of new ones they're willing to sell you. Man, do I wish that they would recreate the chronograph wheels. Ugh. Man, if they started recreating the chronograph wheels, you would extend the life of all of these chronographs indefinitely, because at some point, somewhere down the line, the last chronograph wheel in the last running 6139 or 6138 is going to fail, and that will be the end of it. I mean, that's theoretical. That'll never happen, but it could. As my dad used to say, they don't make them anymore. Okay. Lester loves watches. This is about a Seiko 6139 6002 that I did as an evaluation for the first job. And it's beautiful. Really, really, like perfectly nice dial. What a lovely original yellow dial. When you uncase a watch, which clearly has not seen any water ingress, is it ever possible that even the natural humidity in the air will start a mild oxidation reaction on the naked dial? Possibly. I mean, I've seen changes in much more humid environments. Here in Colorado, typically that doesn't happen. We're extremely dry here. This watch is 100% original. I haven't done anything to it. I haven't cleaned no, that's not true. I've completely serviced it, but I didn't do anything cosmetic to it beyond cleaning. So there's the original lume on this watch. I've owned a lot of watches like in this condition. I've owned a lot of blue dial watches in that condition, like blue 6139s. And I actually owned this blue 6139 during the period where this occurred. So this is a 6139 6000. No, I'm sorry, 6139 6009. This is the North American version. I grabbed the wrong watch. And I knocked something else off. Would you stop it? There we go. Okay, this is the watch I wanted to talk about. This is a 6139 6000. It is completely original, entirely unrestored. I've never done anything to this watch. I think I've only worn it a couple times. I've owned it for 12 or 13 years. This is the watch that gave me the Chiclet name. I came up with the Chiclet name when I had this watch. When I first got this watch, it arrived from eBay, and I was standing in the kitchen talking to Sabrina, and I was looking at it, I was like, that kind of looks like Chiclet gum. Interesting. There was a point to all this, and I don't... Oh, yes. But anyway, back in the day, after I found this, we did a brief sojourn to California, to San Francisco. My company moved me there, and we were there for a little bit, not too long, but there was a day. It was a Saturday, and we were going to head up north. We were going to cross the Golden Gate Bridge, and we were going to go up to, I think, like Point Reyes, or maybe we were going up to some of the flea markets that were up there way back when. In any case, it was a nice day. It wasn't too hot. It's pretty sunny. It's fairly humid in San Francisco. And I had one of these watches, but it was a later one. It was a no-text dial 6139 6005 in almost perfect condition. And I was wearing it, and we were driving. It was warm, and I had serviced the watch fairly recently, I believe in San Francisco, which had in any case, I was wearing the damn thing, and we were driving. The lume was perfect at like 10 in the morning. Perfect. And I remember we were driving, heading up that hill, going towards after you've crossed over the Golden Gate Bridge, and you have to come up this sort of big hill and curve over, and you go through this big tunnel down to that heads to the north. I remember looking at the watch in the sun as I was driving. I'm like, God, that's a beautiful watch. Look at that beautiful white lume. I mean, white, like whiter than this. And then I noticed that afternoon, coming back, and we were in that same area, it had been kind of hot, like hot in the sun. And I looked down, and the lume in the watch was gray. It happened in like 4 hours. I still can't believe it. But there was enough moisture in there, enough humidity in there. With the heat, it was able to react. Terrifying. That only happened in my memory with one other watch. There was a 6309 cushion case where basically that same thing happened, where I rebuilt it, and it had never been rebuilt. It was completely original. And the lume was exquisite white. And again, I serviced it. This was a long time ago, and the lume turned a dark gray in a few days, and I still don't know how that happened, because I went through that watch very slowly, but it was heartbreaking, and I didn't have my whitening solution yet. If I had, I could have saved it. Not that it wasn't saved, but I mean, gray lume is not as attractive as clean white lume, especially back when, I couldn't whiten the stuff. Now I can, so it's not that big of a deal, but back in the day, I wish I still had that watch, that 6139. Ooh. I remember looking at that watch side by side with this watch. I remember that day. And I remember looking at this one and thinking kind of how tatty this one looked. I mean, it's not bad. But, I mean, you could definitely see that it was worn, and, it had been on a wrist a little bit. The other one was immaculate. That tells you what it was like in those days, getting watches. That this looked a little sort of old and ratty. And I haven't done anything to it. So how do you deal with that? One thing that I used to do, and I haven't really remembered or thought about doing it, is you can make a mix of clear binder, clear enamel, and you thin the ever-loving heck out of it. So it's very, very small amount of that binder. And you can put that on the lume, the underside of the hands, and it'll come up through the lume, or on top of the markers, and it'll soak in. And when it cures, you can't see anything. You can't see it at all. It looks exactly stock, but everything will be sealed. I've never run into a situation where that has caused loom damage. I don't really think about it too much. I wonder if I should start thinking about that again. It's been a while since I've done that. Usually I reserve that treatment for damaged loom that is delicate, especially like in hands, and it's starting to come out, but we want to save it. You do that clear loom, that clear binder on the back of the hands, and it'll hold the loom perfectly. I don't know how comprehensive a job the stuff does, though, in isolating the loom from the environment. Stay out of the sun. That's what I would say. Okay. Texas Twister is also talking about that gold 6139 6002. I can't wait to see this beast brought back to life. Funny and great to hear Sabrina chime in. Yeah, I know. Seriously, one of the things I used to love the most about making these videos was when Sabrina was with me and we were both here. Because it was just, it was fun. It was really fun talking to her. I mean, she's my wife and I love her. And we're together every single day. But I don't know, it's just so funny being with her. But, you know, she's not here right now. She's out getting the kids from school. But, you know, I can't push it. She's not going to come back willingly until she feels like it. And me saying, honey, I really enjoyed like interacting with you on camera. It just makes her feel guilty for not doing it anymore. And then that makes her angry. And then that makes her just generally snippy at everyone, but especially me. So I don't suggest it anymore. But I get you. It was a good pairing. I think it was a good pairing. And I think that I do a lot better when she's here. But, you know, I do what I can. Yeah, I miss having her around. And if she's passing through and I'm making a video, I try to always make a point of grabbing her in some way so at least she participates in some way. Okay, last one is from Steve Moore, Isle of Man. It's a comment on a watch. It's one of these early, it's a 1984 20 or something. It's a really early sport diver, 70-meter sport diver, black dial, loomed Arabic numbers, and the bezel has individual fluting at each hour marker. Okay, so this watch that you just saw, Stephen Moore says, this watch was mine. I sold it to this person, Guy, as I'm trying to pare back my collection. He posted photos of the repaired watch. Note his comment about the PX70 mark on the inside of the case back. I had not opened the watch. So inside the case back there is a mark that says PX-70. Its serial number is 8N1070. That makes it November 1968. And it has that military style Mac V SOG dial, and it has a P70 in the case back, which puts it on an Army base. PX is post exchange, basically Walmart type store on an Army base. On Air Force bases, it's a BX, base exchange. Navy bases, it's NAVX, Navy exchange. Bases also have commissaries, which are goods stores. So is this a missing Mac V SOG watch? All thanks to you, Sabrina and the family. The thing was, there really were, as far as I know, only two official Mac V SOGs. One was the 6119 8060, and the other one was the 7580 30. There was an earlier model, which was the 6619, that had the dial, black dial with the loomed Arabic numbers. Those were the first ones that I'm aware of that were worn specifically, but those were still guys going to the PX and buying their watches and bringing them and wearing them themselves. It was only the next two generations where our military procured those watches specifically from Seiko in set amounts. This is around the time that a lot of their actions in like Laos and Cambodia and all kinds of other places they were not supposed to be. That's when that was happening. That said, dudes, like you said, at the PX, you could buy any amount of different kinds of watches. I've heard of everything you can imagine. You know, guys would routinely talk about trying to decide if they wanted to buy the Seiko or the Rolex. That comment you see a lot, or a Glycine or whatever else it is that they're selling. So it's possible that one of those guys, sure, could have bought one. I absolutely know of one of this model watch that was in Vietnam. In fact, I had a video all about it. And the gentleman has pictures of his father wearing the watch in Vietnam. But it was private purchase, and his dad was not special forces of any kind. He was just a guy. But he was wearing the watch, but he bought it at the PX. As for service, I don't remember ever seeing a watch that had a PX stamp inside the case back. Logically, that would make sense. 70 would make sense. 1970. PX, what else is PX? So it's certainly possible. I was not aware that any PXs would have watch repair on site, though. That's something I'm just not sure about. So has anybody else ever seen a case back stamp that says PX? I'd be very curious to know. So it may well be that it was bought in theater. We know that happened. It may well be that it was worn by some special forces somewhere. We know that happened as well. As for an issued watch, I'm not aware of that. But, you know, those guys, they destroyed all their records when they were pulling out, when we were ending the war, and that was all gone. So a lot of the records we have are fragmentary at best. And a lot of the things we do know are from first-person historical accounts. You know, basically, if it's a watch from that era, in that time, in that place, it could have been anything. Could have been anything. Anyway, yeah, I have one watch. It's a 6619 8060, but with the civilian dial. But I bought it, and the dude bought it from the PX in Saigon, Choson. And he wore it for a tour and a half, and then he snapped the crown off, and that was the end of it. But I have the watch. It's not great, but I do have it. I don't know. I think that's about it. Not a lot going on. I mean, I'm on to the new jobs now. I'd wanted to get it started by March 1st. That did not happen. I got a couple little days late, but I am in the saddle. A lot of different stuff going on. Some new techniques I've come up with. Burnishing, actually. And maybe we'll go out with that, huh? We'll do a last little segment. I'll just talk about burnishing. That should be fun. Okay, but then failing that, folks, also, I swear, I'm still going to do my state of the collection, but every time I think to do it, there's some reason I can't. Okay, folks, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later on.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Cricket.